I'm CK, and in this installment of CK Has More Money Than Sense, we're going to be taking a look at a very small table saw. I think the blade is between 3 and 4 inches, and maximum depth is 1 inch of cut, and it apparently also has a rotary tool power takeoff on it. I just got it for about $60 US from Amazon, and it's not completely useless as a tool. There are many times when I have some small pieces of wood or small projects with some 1/4 inch or thinner wood or plastic or even metal that is not appropriate for my big table saw and I don't want to do with my jigsaw, so I decided I'll give this a try. It might work out very well, and it's certainly small enough that if it doesn't work out I can tuck it in a cabinet and not worry about it. So let's unbox it, see what it looks like, and put it to the test. And I hope you enjoy the video. Here's the box. I picked this up from Amazon for, again, it was $60-some US. It was midway between the cheapest one I could see, which was like $35, and a more expensive one at, say, $150, so I figured I'd give it a try. Now, I apologize, the box is already cut open because I didn't know what was in it, and this wasn't supposed to show up for another week or so, but I did not take anything out. So let's see what we got. Got the brochure, trifold brochure, product description. It's got how to install the saw blade, claw screws to fix the backer, column screws. Oh, there's a bunch of assembly we need to do. And there's the chuck to attach a flexible shaft to the outside, so to take the place of a Dremel tool or whatever. Keep the workplace clean. Do not use electrical tools in the messy workplace and work table. Well, I guess I can't use it then. So this comes out at 10 centimeters high, 16 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters deep, 24 volts, 10,000 RPM minimum, output speed, oh, that's the motor speed. The output speed is 1,000 to 3,000 RPM. Clamping range, adaptive power, maximum cutting depth is 35 mil, and the collet range on the extension is 0.3 to 4 millimeters. So that's you could use Dremel tool type shafts as well as regular drill bits. And it says the same thing in both places. I don't know what the difference between this and this is. They appear identical. Now let's see what we've got. We've got, oh, bunches of stuff. Bunches and bunches of stuff. This will be fun. I'm looking up at the camera to make sure I'm getting this. So it looks like this is for some stuff for the collet and drive, I guess. It's a disc sander that you can attach to the collet drive thing with a bunch of replacement discs. That's nice. Here's my garbage can. See, that's what happens. That's how you get a messy workspace. It's when you can't find your garbage can. So here's the chuck. And I'm not going to take it out right now because it's all oily and I don't want to get my hands all oily. That's a good sized chuck. And we've got a chuck key and a shaft to put this sander disc on and a couple of lock screws. So we'll set that aside for later when we start looking at how the collet works. I mean, the collet. Then we've got a screwdriver to adjust things with, I'm sure, and a little piece of foam, which also is going to go on the floor. Here we have a saw guide, I believe, or saw covering the blade when it's going up high. Some other hardware to put everything together. That's all nice. Here we've got something. And of course I didn't bring my scissors over here, because I'm silly. Let me go get my scissors. Camera skip coming. Back with my scissors. Heavy little piece of metal. It's threaded. We'll figure out from the brochure we saw earlier how to put that all together. Here is the blade. Looks like about a, I don't know, that might be a 40-tooth blade. Let's see, I'm going to count real fast. Again, I'll speed this up. Looks like about a 44-tooth blade, which is plenty fine enough. Now we'll pull the actual thing out. And we'll get this box ready for recycling. And there it is. There's the AC adapter stuck up underneath it. Let's see what this is rated for. Input, universal input, 110 to 240. And output is 12, 15, 16, 18, 19 volts at 9.5 amps. And then underneath that is 20 to 24 volts at 8.5 amps. Do not remove this cover. For use with information technology equipment. This is not a piece of informational technology equipment, but we'll manage. I think this switch sets the voltage. Okay, I'm going to have to see if they talk about this power adapter at all. They don't, and I don't know what this switch does, and if you'll, oh, I see, here we go. It's got LEDs for 12, 15, 16, whatever volts. Now, it shows tip positive or tip negative, which is interesting because I don't see how you set the polarity on this. Maybe it auto senses it. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. Here's the saw guide. Let me get a little piece of something to slide it along. It's fine. It's got a little, I assume that's in millimeters. So let me set this aside for a second so you can get a sense of scale here. Here is a blade for my table saw, 8.5 inch, and here's this blade. So you can see a significant difference, even though I will say the kerf on this, the width of the teeth is wider than I would have expected. So there's going to be, I mean, it's almost as wide as this 8.25 inch. In fact, it is almost exactly as wide as the tooth width, cutting tooth area is almost as wide as the 8.25 inch blade. So that's interesting. So let's see what we're, oh, okay, this does not come with a shaft, spring shaft to drive anything. So what we can do is mount the collet this way, but we have to get a shaft, a flexible shaft, which I do not have because I have Dremel tools instead. So I may mount this temporarily, but I'm not going to run it with this on here because I can't do anything with it right now. But again, if you want to see how that goes, let me get a paper towel back in a second because I'm going to get oil all over my hands. So all we would do with this is take the chuck out. Again, it's not a bad chuck. It's a little grindy. put it on there like so. Man, and then there are 3 set screws in here which you can use to mount it, lock it down, and then the shaft, which I can use this without the flexible collet. I mean flexible shaft. I can just mount that in there and put this here and have a little sanding station, so that's certainly worthwhile. Keeps me from having to turn on my million RPM belt sander. So that's neat. I'm going to put all this away. We may try it later, but I'm not going to try it now because I can't but think that as this shaft, having this additional weight on the shaft is going to take some power away from the motor for the blade. So let's see what they want us to do to put this together. Loosen the saw clip. First we'll grab, there should be a long kind of Allen wrenchy thing. And there is a long Allen wrenchy thing. Trying to see what I'm doing just to be sure. Okay, going this way. Pull this out. Oh, that screw wasn't even tight at all. Pull that out momentarily, and everything is oiled up very nicely. I mean, it's not going to rust while it's in transit. Now we'll take the blade and put the blade on. Do not install the blade backwards. And we want to go in. Which way do we want to go in? We want to go in this way. Drop the blade in from the top, I guess. Okay, now we'll put this back on. Snug that down tightly. I'm going to have to put this somewhere to make sure I don't lose it. Check saw blade is securely installed. Now we're going to put the fence on, which is this guy. So we're going to do this. This is the way it goes. And we've got some wing nuts. Now one thing that's going to cause me a bit of thought is this is marked in millimeters, and I'm used to working in inch because I'm in the US, so I just will have to get used to that. Now this is not as parallel tracking as you'd want, so if you're adjusting the fence, you will want to make sure you check both ends to make sure they're both at the same. So I'm at 5 centimeters on both ends. And then this is a little different than what I thought. I thought it was going to cover the I'm not going to peel the backing off this right yet. So what we need to do is we take this brass standoff. Screw it in there. Then we have our little chip or eye shield. Moves back and forth. So that's good. Now one thing you might notice here is there's no riving knife on the end. So there's nothing here to particularly prevent kickback. I don't know how much of a challenge that's going to be. So we'll try it with a couple of different materials and see if it kicks back on us, because that's always a concern when you're using a table saw. Now, yeah, this is interesting. It's reverse from what I usually use. If I take a little piece of wood, I'm going to feed it through like that. Now, one thing we do not have the ability to do here is we do not have the ability to adjust the blade height. So this is the blade height you get. And if you don't like it, well, that's tough. And this is belt driven. There's a belt right here. There's the motor, and there's the belt. And if you can see here, there are two Allen screws that will allow you to adjust the belt tension and change the belt. They did not include a spare belt, which is fine. Well, you know, there's nothing much else to talk about here except putting the drill chuck on, which I'm not going to do right now, as I said. Let's see how notchy this is. These are never really that accurate. It's got a little slop, not much, because this is stamped metal. It's not cast. Okay, so, you know, there's nothing better than actually cutting stuff with the table saw to see how it works. So let me do that. I'm going to recycle. I'll turn the cameras off for a minute while I get all set up for this. We're back, and I've got it plugged in. One thing I do want to emphasize is you push the power connector in from this side, and that puts your finger here next to the rotating shaft and the belt assembly. So if you're going to plug it in, don't plug it in with the other end already plugged in. Have it unplugged when you plug this in, because if you accidentally left it on and you're pushing on this to get it seated and the motor starts up, it could certainly hurt your little finger. And of course, the next most important thing is safety goggles. Always wear safety goggles. Now I'm going to turn it on and not do anything for a minute. Let's hear how it sounds and see how it works, and see if it off gases a little bit or something. Oh, that's very quiet. That's a nice little sound. Huh. Okay, that's dandy. I'm going to take this little piece of wood, it's what, 3/16 or something, and I'm going to try and cut it. The cut looks very smooth. It is very smooth. It didn't disrupt anything. There's no fraying. That's a good blade. Okay, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to try a little piece of plexiglass. Not that I'm probably going to do this, but I might. If it works, I certainly will. So let me get the blade rolling again. so you could hear that. It did chip the plastic a little bit, so I could probably find a different blade, maybe an 80-tooth blade. Might be good for plexiglass. Now I'm going to try, they say it can cut up to 1 inch, and I've got a piece of 1 by 4 or 1 by 3. Is it 1 by 4 or 1 by 3? It's 1 by 3, or 1 by 2.5. No, it's 1 by 3. And we'll see how it works on that. By the way, I've got the voltage set at 24. I've got it at the highest voltage rating, which results in, as it says here, voltage rating of 24 volts gives us that 3,000 RPM. So let me try this and see how it works. Well, that worked very, very well. So you didn't hear the motor slow down at all. It's clearly got enough power to go through a 1-inch piece of pine. So that's good. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to change the voltage. I'm going to drop back down to, what does this say? I'm going to drop back down to 18 volts and see if we can hear a difference. And then I'll try this smaller piece of wood or thinner piece of wood again. So let's fire this up. Oh, much quieter. But still cuts very well. That's good. I'm going to try this piece of, let me get this piece of wood out of the way. I'm going to try the plexiglass again to see if the slower RPM would reduce chipping. It did for the most part. You'd have to be really careful with it, but no, it's not really great for this. Again, I'm going to see if I can get a different multi-tooth blade for this. I was going to try some metal, but I don't think I'm going to. That blade, it will not work on the metal very well. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the cameras off, and I'm going to put the drill chuck on here, see if it slows things down, and I'll try the little sanding pads. So I'll be back in a little bit. All right, so I unplugged it because I'm going to be working on the shaft. And one thing I will say, there are a couple of kind of safety issues here. One is there's no big shutoff button. Most of my floor equipment has a big button to shut it off in case something goes wrong. This, you have to get to that little toggle switch, which is not great. Again, there's no riving knife, so it's theoretically possible to have kickback on this, so be careful about that. Now I'm going to mount this, and I decided to go ahead and mount this and keep it on because I do want to understand how the weight of this chuck affects things. And I have to pull this off so I can get the lock screws in. Get my head in the shot a little bit. Oh, I was looking for the third lock screw hole. There isn't one because there's only 2 lock screws, but they give you 3 just in case you lose one. So I've already got the disc sander mandrel in there, as I mentioned before. So I'll tighten the chuck with the enclosed chuck key, which is great. Now I'll spin the disc on. I don't care if it's quite flat. Now, I'm going to use this as you'll notice, the blade is exposed. So, number one, you definitely want to make sure you have your blade guard on, but that's really not enough, because you can just be aware this is spinning like mad while you're over here sanding. So, and there is no way to raise or lower the height of the blade. And there's also, and this is on a separate issue, but I'll mention it now, there's no way to angle the blade, so you can't do a 45-degree angle cut or that kind of thing, which is a little bit limiting, but again, for $60. So I'm going to swing this around here. I'm going to put my safety glasses back on. I'm going to take this little piece of wood and do some disc sanding with it. Make sure that's all pressed on well. And let's hear if we can hear a difference in the motor speed. No, because I was safety conscious and unplugged it. And I'm proud of myself for that. Let me plug it back in. Again, I'm reaching across the device to get to this power switch. And if I bring my hand back carelessly, I could impact that saw blade. So we want to be very careful. Sounds good. Let's do a little sanding. Oh no, works very serviceably. I'm going to change voltage on the fly. Oh, you see it walking? Let me do that again and watch the saw device itself. See how it walks? There is nothing. I'm going to turn it off by coming around carefully. There is nothing holding this down. So when you're using this, and also when you're using the saw, but when you're using this, you can push this around pretty easily. So when you use this, and when I use it, what I'll probably do is take one of my clamps and clamp it down to the work surface I'm working on so it doesn't walk, because again, I talk about a lot of this stuff because it's instinctual. I taught mechanics in the new mechanics in the Air Force way in the past, back in the 70s, and I watched what people who weren't that experienced would do, and if they're like working on this as a sander, I'm going to unplug this again. Working on this as a sander and it starts slipping, they may just reach over to, oh, I'll stop it, oh, I'll stop it, and hit that blade. So very important to keep up with your safety regime and all the knowledge you have about personal safety. And if you don't know safety on table saws in particular, because table saws have a lot of hidden gotchas, or they won't be hidden very long because you run into them sometime in your early table sawing career, and hopefully it won't hurt you. But the one thing again is kickback. There's no riving knife here, so if you're using this fence, you could theoretically choke the blade a little bit, have this come kicking back at you. There's no protection from that, and there's no way to mount a riving knife on there. Again, this device is unplugged. I'll unplug it completely there. There are exposed belts and shafts, which you absolutely would hurt like hell. In fact, may cause a lot more damage if you got your finger stuck between that belt and the motor shaft. This is okay, but it's got a little slop. There's no angle adjustment on the blade. The fence is not linear. You have to match both ends up. This is okay, but not great. It's very light. So this is a good unit, and again, for $60, I will probably get my use out of it. For small things like making small boxes or something like that, I don't want to break out the big table saw and so on. but it comes with risks. If you're not confident in this, or even probably more importantly, if you have a household with small children or even teenagers, lock this away. This can be very dangerous to someone who's not familiar with it. But it's got a lot of utility. Again, I'll use it. I'm happy I got it. Just be aware that you have to take responsibility for your and your family's personal safety with this device, because it's got some gotchas. And I hope you enjoyed the video.